Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the Muffs because I recently spoke to their bass player, Ronnie Barnett, to find out more about life, love and poetry and everything else. So this is the interview, and I won't give you any more details about the Muffs. I think you probably know, or you're about to find out. So let's face it, this is all good stuff. So after several minutes of casual chat, which gets edited out, we get down to that very exciting subject that was the early formative years. It's a great place to start. Come on, let's face it. Anyway, Ronnie, it's over to you.
I'm a year behind you, David. So I was born in 1965. So the first thing I remember was my mother took me to see Elvis Presley when I was 5 in the Houston Astrodome. I'm from Houston, Texas originally. And I was 5, so I don't remember specifics really about the music. I remember all the flash bulbs going off, and I remember people were very excited. And 2 years later, when I was 7 in 1972, I saw Elvis again. So by the time I was 7, I saw Elvis twice.
Wow!
But
where was the second time?
The second one was in a place called Hoffhein's Pavilion in Houston, Texas. Again, a smaller place. The Astrodome was when you see people that like say they headline the Astrodome, they basically played. They were guests at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. They didn't sell the Astrodome necessarily on their own merits. It was part of a rodeo. But yeah, that's what Elvis. That's where he did the first time, and then yeah, smaller place. But also so around 72, I still like the Partridge Family. I like the Partridge Family. I wanted more Partridge Family records. My mother gave me some money and sent me with my older brother to the record store. And my older brother said, "You don't want those Partridge Family records. Buy these." And he handed me Frank Zappa's Apostrophe and Cheech and Chong's Big Bamboo, which obviously were records he wanted. But yes. I walked out with those records. And so those are my first 2 records, which may or may not say a lot about me. I'm not sure.
Well, it's kind of an interesting mix there, really.
Yeah. But the first record I remember buying on my own was the Golden Earrings Radar Love 7-inch, which I think is like 74. Yeah. So. Yes.
Yeah. So how old was your older brother, by the way? How much older?
I had 4 older brothers. So they were all one was, 8 years older. I mean, the one nearest in age to me was like 3 years older than me. So they didn't pay much attention to me, but I did in that same brother's room. That's where I saw like the Black Sabbath Paranoid album cover, which used to horrify me.
Yes.
I'm sure I would have been scared at the first Black Sabbath record cover had he had that one as well. And then I remember him going to see Alice Cooper and telling me about all the stabbing the baby and all that stuff. And I remember again being just scared out of my wits and wondering about this Alice Cooper fellow. And I would steal his copy of School's Out and make it into that desk that it folded into.
Yeah.
And so that's my earliest.
I was the third of 3 boys, and there was a bit of a gap. There was 2 older, 7 years and 5 years, and then there was this little bit of an afterthought. I think they were trying for a girl actually, and they got me. Lucky for them. But I idolized my older brother, and that period, the 70s, was his decade. He was really into prog rock, like Yes, Genesis, Wishbone Ash, Barclay James Harvest, but he also had Deep Purple, I don't know, Fireball or Burn, and he also had the double kind of Bloody Sabbath albums or album, a kind of compilation, and also there was also Sgt. Pepper by the Beatles and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and this was all kind of like quite early mid 70s, and I just looking back thinking, God, the Beatles had only just broken up then, but for a young person they just seemed like, I don't know, Cliff Richard, I suppose, or, I realized they'd only broken up 3 or 4 years ago, but it seemed like, they'd been and gone, so don't worry about it.
No, absolutely. And we also can't discount the importance of FM radio back in the 70s. I mean, my FM radio station played, as well as like commercial stuff, would play long, I remember every morning waking up for school and hearing Roundabout by Yes. For whatever reason, that was played at like 7 a.m. every morning. But
Wow,
you know,
that's very
yeah,
good.
they'd play long tracks. I remember they would break albums, so they'd play like, you know, Led Zeppelin's Presence is coming out, and they play the whole album, and you know, you'd record it.
Because
Yeah,
in the UK, we had obviously Radio 1, which was massive, and it had this kind of, they were the gatekeepers of popular music. There was no other alternative, really. And then we had Radio 2, and that was the light, kind of very easy listening music, which, you know, was just like, I don't know, rarely, you know, my mum used to play it, I suppose, when in the kitchen when I was very young. And so I have got a love for Burt Bacharach and the Carpenters and sort of certain soft, you know, Roger Whittaker, I think is brilliant.
Yes. Design, David. Do you know the English band Design?
No.
Oh, you got to look them up.
Design.
Design. They wore matching outfits, and they ended up on the cabaret circuit, but they just re-released their first album, and it's a really wonderful like soft pop like masterpiece, I think. So
yeah, well, I mean, you know, I know it was when was it the Sonic Youth did a compilation, If I Was a Carpenter, and there was that sort of all those New York bands that, well, there's also the Cranberries who did a cover of a beat, you know, the Carpenters, and I thought, yes, I've always loved them. You know, I've always loved the Carpenters. I love Rainy Days and Mondays. And I think if you like the Carpenters, you're definitely going to like Joy Division and the Smiths, because frankly, the lyrics are there with Morrissey and Ian Curtis. That's my theory. You know.
No, I can see that. I can see that.
And I still think Roger Whittaker has a sort of a sadness in his, a melancholia, which I love. Romantic melancholia is kind of my go-to state, my bit. So you were you were in Austin during the 70s. So
Houston,
right. And then as the 70s progressed, because I completely missed punk, let's face it, we were both too young, weren't we? So
well, I was lucky enough to I always hung out with older people. I guess maybe having the older brothers, I always hung out with older people. Like one of my best friends was the son of my mom's best friend, who was older than me. And for him to save face, we used to say I was his cousin, you know, not his friend that was like 4 years younger. But all these people introduced me to everything from prog rock bands, like you mentioned, to like Rush, to like I remember they had a Kraftwerk Autobahn cassette for some reason. And then punk came around, and they were into punk. And by and you know, at a young age, I had a family friend give me a collection of Cream magazines when I was 10 in 1975, and that basically raised me. And I looked at all those ads, and I fell in love with Kiss. And remember begging my parents to take me to see Kiss, which they did when I was 11. And after that, I started just wanting to go to concerts. So I started really young. I remember I saw ZZ Top at age 11, and I hate to admit this on the show, David, but it's my earliest memory of smoking pot at age 11 at ZZ Top in Houston, Texas.
That's fantastic.
But anyway.
Well, interesting enough, I did an interview with Colin Bluntstone from the Zombies, and this last week, because they're doing some various bits, and he mentioned that when they broke up after their classic album, Oracle and Odyssey and Oracle, there was various bands, because suddenly they became popular, but there was no band. And then there was a few pretend zombie bands that appeared.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And actually one of them featured two members of ZZ Top, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. That's right. The Zombies hit it big right when they broke up.
Yes. And some promoter said, oh, actually, it doesn't matter. We'll just go and just put this band together, and we'll just go out as the Zombies. And apparently, so Colin Bluntstone then told me that a very obsessed fan went into the changing rooms with a gun and said, "Stop doing this now, otherwise I'm going to shoot you." And they went, "Okay, that's the end of us pretending to be the Zombies." So that's what Colin Bluntstone told me. So,
yeah. No, I'm getting back to punk though. So punk rolled around. I was aware of it. I was reading the press and everything, and I remember buying tickets to see the Clash their first time through Texas. This was '79, on the tour after Give 'Em Enough Rope, but before London Calling. The tour where that cover photo with Paul Simonon was taken. I bought tickets, and the same older brother I was talking about was going to take me. I had to get rides to shows, obviously, back then. And when the day of the show, I will never let him live this down. The bill was the Clash, Joe Ely, and a local punk band called Legionnaire's Disease. And my brother had heard that the singer of Legionnaire's Disease would jack off on stage. So he was like, I'm not taking you to this. I screw that punk stuff. And I still have the full tickets. I remember crying like a baby. So he did not take me. But that said, around 1980, when I was 15, I learned that I could get into clubs. So I got into punk clubs in Houston. And as you probably know, David, Texas had a great punk scene that was just going at that time. In Houston, we had Really Red and the My Dolls. Austin had the Big Boys and the Dicks, and all sorts of great bands. So I was lucky enough, and the people running clubs were lax enough to let me in these places, and I had the older friends to take me to them. So I actually got to see a lot of great bands and actually take in that era. So,
my God, that was such a good education, wasn't it? And were you
I
kind of
feel very
aware of
lucky.
that kind of next period of the post-punk world of, like, I don't know, Gang of Four magazine, I suppose Joy Division, people like that, and then the Nightingales and Marky Smith and the Fall. Were you sort of seeing that kind of change come in as well?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I was buying that stuff too. I mean, there was nothing greater than going to a record store then that would have imports, and there would just every week there would be just an avalanche of new great releases. I mean, I feel so lucky to have been there. And yeah, I saw Gang of Four on their first album tour at a club called Spit in Houston. I was 16 or whatever. I think that would have been 81.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I saw Ultravox on the Vienna tour in a club. I people probably don't believe me because I had such great experiences. But,
Well, to be honest, you saw Elvis twice when you were by the age.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, and
I mean, it makes the Gang of Four look a bit, fuck.
No, and that led to the first band I was ever in was when I was a sophomore in high school. It was with a government teacher at my high school and his brother. Again, older people influenced me, and we played our high school talent show when I was a sophomore. And we played I Found That Essence Rare by Gang of Four. We played Mannequin by Wire. What else did we do? We did a Kink song, but to put in perspective, the other band at this talent show played 38 Special, and it was very different, and we didn't go over that well. But yeah,
yes.
I learned playing. Yeah, the first song I learned how to play on bass was "It's Too Bad" by The Jam, a dumbed down version because it's a fancy bass line. But yeah, that's so I grew up on all that shit. I saw The Jam on the Setting Suns tour in 1980 in a club. So I again.
You basically, yes. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's seen so many bands and such an amazing CV. Actually, that's kind of you've topped everyone. I still,
I got the ticket stubs, David. I can prove this.
I completely, yeah. I mean, not many people would want to make those stories up, really, because you would look bit. But then, so when did you decide, to try and play an instrument?
Yeah, what happened was I was hanging around the local record store. This is like age 14. It was called Southwest Records, and I became friendly with the manager. And he would again, another guy that didn't like anything punky. So he would give me the punky promo records, and I'd sweep up and help around the store. So he played bass. So he influenced me, and he was into, Texas also had this very vibrant blues scene. People probably don't realize it. Like the Fabulous Thunderbirds, the original lineup was an amazing band. They were not the commercial Tough Enough group, and all these people, when I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan for the first time, I was like, oh, that's Jimmy Vaughan's brother who plays a lot of notes and plays the same scales really fast. I didn't get it at first. I get it now. But anyway, this manager, his name was Scott. He influenced me to ask my parents for a bass. So my father gave me a bass in 1978. And it was a Fender Precision bass, and it's the same bass I played through my whole career. I never found a better one. I mated for life with that. So yeah, I was given a bass, and kids don't ask for basses. Kids ask for guitars or drums. Nobody grows up wanting to play bass. And in fact, my parents got me bass lessons. And after the first lesson, they're like, you should get him a guitar. And they got me an acoustic guitar. But what happened was I met that government teacher I talked about that was my first band at that record store, told him I had a bass. And basically those guys took me in, and that's how I learned to play. I learned, I got in that band, and Wayne, the guitar player, the teacher's brother, taught me. He taught me that jam song. He taught me that Gang of Four song. You know, and that's how I learned. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because Lemmy from Motorhead, I mean, he went, I mean, the story is that he was at school and he saw some kid with a guitar and all these girls around him, and he went, right, that's it. I can work this out at a very young age, and just walked around with a guitar and went, hey, it does work. And then sort of, he wasn't a very good guitarist with the Rock and Vickers. And then sort of, I think he got the gig with Hawkwind. And I think just stayed with that, and then obviously got kicked out of Hawkwind, then formed Motorhead. So the bass player, and there was another guy, God, who's his name? It's not Jar Wobble, but it's somebody who's a serious bass player who said that, he picked it up quite, not easily, but it was quite straightforward.
Well, that's the thing. Bass is like the easiest to kind of learn, but as they say, easy to learn, hard to master. And it's kind of true. You got to have, you're just playing one note or whatever at a time, but you got to have a feel. You got to, and as far as my playing, I'm basically all feel. I'm not, I'm not playing fancy. I'm not looking to stick out. I think if you don't notice the bass, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Unless it's something like Jaw Wobble, where bass is like the whole public image is based on that bass, right? Like,
yes, and then there was, I
the whole
suppose,
music.
and then we all remember John Entwistle as well, and thinking, my
God. No. Growing up, John Entwistle is like everyone's favorite bass player, and no one plays like him, right? Like it's like.
Yes. Yeah. So when you hear people like, say, going back to Lemmy, when you hear his bass, did you think, oh yeah, I can work out how he makes that sound, or is it just one of those, God knows?
No, it's more like, how does he get that sound? I mean, even a bigger influence sound-wise like that is J.J. Burnell of the Stranglers. I mean, that is the ultimate bass sound to me. Love the Stranglers, and yeah. And that's kind of I guess it's kind of similar to Lemmy's bass sound in a way. It's distorted and stuff, but
yes,
yeah. I don't know. I have no idea how those guys get that sound.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Now I'm sure there's a fancy pedal that'll do it, but yeah, I don't know how they did it back then.
Yeah. So during the 80s in the UK, anyway, 79, Thatcher gets in, and then in the early 80s, there's a huge amount of unemployment, and a lot of the indie bands are sort of unemployed, and there's various government schemes that people could go on, like the government, enterprise allowance and such, things, which basically got people off the dole. But they would have often a year of just being able to sort of get some dole money, housing benefit, council tax paid. And so they spent that year sort of getting drunk, smoking a bit, and forming bands. And there's a lot of indie bands that got sort of like, that was their kind of beginning, apprenticeship really. And we also in this country had those kind of gatekeepers, like we had John Peel, and we had 3 weekly music papers, which was obviously very exciting. And every city and town in the UK has an alternative indie night, and that the UK is like tiny little place, so you can get that traction quite quickly. So how did your kind of 80s develop, being sort of in sort of America?
Well, I was reading all those English mags too. And like you say, you can ascend very quickly in England, but you also they get rid of you quicker too, right? Like menswear or something. Who have a box set, believe it or not. There's a menswear box set. I'm blown away by that. Anyway, the 80s, I was still paying attention, but I gotta say the golden age kind of ended about 82. As the 80s progressed, the records got more synthetic, and everyone made bad 80s sounding recorurs. Bob Dylan.
Yes, just to say, that's an interesting point, because I've thought back at that, and obviously we had that Trevor Horn production, and we had I don't know, Dire Straits and Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet. But I think the artists who really, really struggled were the ones who'd done it in another decade, like, say, David Bowie. Let's Dance is all right, but then the next two, there's Robert Plant, there was Rod Stewart, and all these people who'd done some pretty good stuff. They get into the 80s, and frankly, that worked during that decade, and there's probably other bands. They just were like, for once in their life, apart from getting terrible haircuts and probably going for a bit of a mullet, they just, instead of trying to sort of just go with a creative flow, they sort of got the, you know, the producer of the day, they try to get that sound, and it just sounds
Yeah.
embarrassing. And it's interesting. But then you have the alternative scene, and as you noticed from that post-punk, then we get into the indie world, and 83 was the
Yeah.
Smiths appeared, and the Smiths were like, oh, this is interesting. And they were the kind of band, I suppose, at that moment who took the baton. And then we had all those you know, like the June Brides and the go-betweens from Australia, and then sort of like a billion other little bands and labels started to appear, like Creation Records and Vindaloo Records and Glass Records and Native Records and the Pink Label, all these kind of very cheap and cheerful indie bands,
Yes.
like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then Cherry Red does a sort of 3 CD box set of C86, and then they go up to C90 as well, you know, with 66 tracks. So there was that kind of scene, but they, you know, then you had, you know, like the mainstream stuff. So yeah, so with your age in America, you had hair metal though, so you trumped it all.
Well, yeah. Well, hair metal was a little late. You know what got us through the '80s is the jangle pop thing. REM was hugely important, and I loved early REM and Let's Active and all those bands from North Carolina and you know, Pylon. I mean, there was some great bands in the '80s. I mean, there was the 3 O'Clock. You know, there's a whole Paisley Underground thing. I loved all those bands. Rain Parade, Dream Syndicate. 3 O'Clock. I love Jason and the Scorchers. From England, the Godfathers. I mean, there was good stuff.
Yes.
You know, and then towards the later '80s. I mean, and of course the C86 scene, as you said, that whole indie.
And then we had the goth scene as well. Like, you know, anybody kind of. I mean, I know it's a bit of a. Everyone says no, I wasn't part of the goth scene, but then you went, well, you do look a bit like a goth, don't you? Like the Cure, Cult, you know, Alien Sex Fiend, all those kind of things, like All About Eve and
Specimen. Yeah.
Specimen, yes. They probably got a box set as well. So there was a, you know, they did go for the Bat Cave, didn't they? So, and Nick Cave and all that bunch. So there was kind of these funny little scenes. So what was it like in your hometown during that period?
Well, locally, in the '80s, that scene in Austin, you know, there were some good bands in Houston as well, but Austin had that scene with, you know, Zeitgeist, who became the Reavers, and Daniel Johnston and Glass Eye, and these are all great bands. Doctor's Mob, you know, that was quite like right after REM kind of got the ball rolling for all those kind of bands. Austin had that great scene. So there was actually a lot.
Well, you had the B-52s, didn't they? Well, they had the B-52s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. You know, the thing about the B-52s in that era, we're going slightly back now, but you know, all these bands formed, and they had the sound that was like fully formed and realized. Like when I listen to the B-52's first record, it amazes me that they came up with that. You know what I mean? Like they're probably together 2 years. They came up with this hugely original sound and like these weird songs, and they're arranged weird, and they have weird parts, and somehow it all works. And they had all these strange singing, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are amazing. Yeah. They're unbelievable.
But then you had the bands like the Wall of Voodoo as well, didn't you? Which was
yeah. I mean, Wall of Voodoo, unbelievable. I mean, they had. I don't know if you ever saw them live. I didn't realize I saw them live. They have that beatbox going, that pulse all the time. And then their drummer, if you will, would sit there and smoke and just add stuff, like hit cymbals or like, ba-da-ba, like, and then he'd smoke. Joe Nannini. Yeah, Wall of Voodoo. I love that band. Thanks for bringing them up.
Mexican radio. If you listen to that, you know, it still blows your mind, actually.
Absolutely.
Amazing. And funny enough, they were on IRS Records, who was Miles Copeland's label. Amazing.
Love IRS Records. Yeah, big fan.
Who won? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he managed the interesting thing with Miles, when he was very young, he managed Wishbone Ash for a very short time. Then he did a tour with Lou Reed, which was a disaster because Lou was in the toilet for 3 days and he never came out, so he went bust. Then he started booking these punk bands from London and was quite organized, and then started, you know, the Police, and then, you know, IRS Records. So it's quite
we had I'm jumping ahead, but we had a meeting with Ian Copeland when we were getting wooed after our band got signed, but we'll get to that later.
Yes. So you were still, But throughout the 80s, we had Reagan. No, you had Reagan. We had Thatcher. So what was it sort of like? Because you still hadn't sort of formed the band, had you, by then?
No. I as I mentioned, I was in that band in high school. I was in two bands when I was in high school, and basically I put the bass down after I got out of high school. I was never, and still am not, the kind of musician, if you will. I hate calling myself a musician. I'm a rare person who is one that you wouldn't know, because I don't make a big deal out of it in a crowd. But I'd given it up, and I thought I'd be a journalist. Actually, I became a music editor of the local weekly paper in Houston, and I was like, free records. I get to talk to Sonic Youth and Buck Owens, and I get in shows for free. This is what I'll do.
I know.
And that's what I did.
The first 12 months is quite extraordinary. The post comes with a bag of CDs, books.
Well, the back. This is the mid to late '80s, so you got to remember, it was all happening then. You know, your mailbox every day was full of new great records. You know, SST, you know, all that stuff. Anyway, I thought I would do that, David. But what happened was, I had met Kim. I had met Kim in 1986 when the Pandoras rolled to Houston, and we hit it off as friends. And actually, I met her in Houston. I drove to Austin the next night and saw them again, and that really is where we cemented that we were going to be friends. And then my brother lived in Southern California, so I came out 2 months later, found Kim again, and that's really where we, you know, we hung out I was here for like a month, so we hung out a lot. Became friends. It was not romantic at this point, but you know, so I went home and we would write letters. We talk on the phone. I hate to sound like a documentary, but you know, there was no internet there. You know, we'd send each other mail and stuff, and we became friends. And what happened was 3 years later in '89, the heavy metal Pandoras rolled through town again. And that's when it became romantic. So after that, I came out here. We hung out, we decided we're going to be a couple, and I went home and left everything behind in Houston and moved out to California for a girl. So,
my God,
so
it's like a Bruce Springsteen song, isn't it? Jesus, that's amazing. I
yeah.
know, because with the Pandoras, there was a lot of shift, wasn't there, in the band at that stage, you know, depending. Yes, who the manager was or who the boyfriends were.
It was the leader. Yeah. It was Paula. I mean, she ran the show. I mean, so they started as a 60s kind of influence band. They went a little more pop 60s. When they signed to Elektra, they went a little more pop. That album never came out. They got dropped. And then she started liking heavy metal. And it's like Paula with all these things too. When she went 60s, she sold her amazing punk collection. When she went heavy metal, she sold her amazing 60s collection. And thing was, when they went heavy metal, they had lost their old audience, and they didn't gain really a new heavy metal audience. So by the time I moved out here and the Pandoras were playing, I was watching them play bottom of the bill at these big metal shows where nobody cared, or watching them play last at the Coconut Teaser to 10 people. I mean, they worked hard, and Paula was a great songwriter, but they really lost their way then. And being Kim's boyfriend and you know, Melanie and her husband Larry were our best friends. You know, I knew how unhappy they were with the direction. I mean, Kim hated it, and you know, and you know, all this time she wanted to play guitar. She played bass in the Pandoras. She had a guitar. She had a band when she was in high school with her then boyfriend. She always wrote songs. She had a 4-track recorder, you know, a cassette thing, C86 related.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so she was always writing songs. I remember she had me play on a song. She found out I had played bass, so she had me play on a song and stuff. And she always wanted to form her own band. So finally the shit kind of hit the fan with the Pandoras. They had kicked out Melanie. You know, they had a second guitarist. They didn't need keyboards anymore, Paula thought. So they had let Melanie go. And a month later, they were supposed to go to Europe. And Paula wanted her boyfriend to go, and he couldn't go. So that tour got canceled literally 2 days before they were going to leave. And that's when Kim's quit the band. I remember at the time, I'm always weird about change and stuff. I'm like, you can't quit. What do you mean? And she's like, no, we'll have our own band. I mean, even before this, me and Kim had gone and auditioned this drummer, a guy named Murdoch, who I have no idea if he's around or who. I don't know how we found him, but we actually went and played with this guy. And so, you know, the seeds for Kim having her own band were planted before she left the Pandoras.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, like with most bands, there is a sort of a time and a narrative, which, you know, having done this show for a long time, I've got it down to 5 years, you know. In this country, you know, there's sort of, like I said, in the 80s, there was a lot of kids were just unemployed because it was like, well, that's quite a cool thing to do. And you didn't feel like you're wasting time. You just thought society had forgotten you, really. And, you know, you get that sort of single, you know, if you hopefully hadn't smoked too much dope and drunk too much. And John Peel would give it a play. Then you got the John Peel Session, which was 4 tracks in the Maida Vale studios at the BBC with someone like Dale Griffith, who was the drummer with Mott the Hoople. And then you got the kind of the album, that little tour around the country, playing all these little clubs and things going well. But then the second album, and by then the band were like, and there was no money. And also the other thing from the UK that I didn't realize, that any band going to America would often come back and go, and then we broke up, because America seems to just destroy most British bands. We just don't have the stamina for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It was intimidating for the English band coming over here and being like, wow, New York is here and LA is way over there, and in between, it can be a little weird.
Yes. Well, interesting. I did an interview with Miles Copeland, and he said that the Police, you know, just briefly, he said the most important gig was in America in front of 4 people, but one of them was a kind of, not a big DJ, but a kind of a bit of a DJ, and that kind of elevated the band to be on the sort of radar of A&M Records. And it was like, but if it hadn't been for that one gig, you know, they would have not sort of taken off. So it was like, blimey, that was quite something, really. But
you never know.
Interesting. But then, you know, in this country, in '87, the Smiths break up, which huge, and then Ecstasy comes along, and then the next generation of kids, you know, want their soundtrack, and it's kind of pretty ravey at this stage. So you've got all those kind of slightly acid, you know, and the Happy Mondays had gone into a bit of rave, and the Primal Scream and Soup Dragons, and then you had all those DJs like Guy Called Gerald and sort of Balearic Beat. So how did that, you know, those changes in music? But then you also got, you know, Sonic Youth had gone from SST Records to, I don't know, Warner Music or WEA. And then there was the kind of the grunge scene, and then Seattle sort of took off about 1990, really, though Bleach had come out the year before. Was that something that was kind of really on your radar at that stage?
Not the ravey stuff you mentioned. I didn't care for that stuff at all. But you know what was hugely influential? It's funny because I thought, you know, as I said, me and Kim were a couple. I was taking her to see all these bands, which is funny now. I took Kim to see Swans. I took her to see King's X, like all these bands that she, you know, wouldn't like. But I'll tell you what she did like that I really loved was that scene. Those bands like the Primitives and the Darling Buds and Voice of the Beehive. Loved all those bands, and it's not said a lot. Primitives were actually a big influence on us forming the Muffs. I remember me and Kim wanted to cover Really Stupid. I took her to see them. We saw them 2 nights in a row. Like they dedicated. This is a funny story. We saw the Primitives in Long Beach, and I got their autographs after the show. I was wearing a Mudhoney shirt, and I kind of mentioned we're going to be at the Roxy tomorrow, and I have this on tape. The next night at the Roxy, they come out for the encore, and they say, Tracy says, this song's dedicated to Mr. and Mrs. Mudhoney. And that was me and Kim. So yeah, that fuzzy guitar with the melodic pop song underneath it. I mean, that was a big influence on the Muffs. And yeah, I love the Sub Pop stuff. I had an advanced tape of Bleach before it came out. I saw the 4-piece Nirvana here at Al's Bar with 40 people, you know, the week before Bleach came out. So I loved all those bands. And yeah, when the Muffs formed, we formed in late 1990. Our first show was January 1991. And yeah, grunge was a big influence on us. Our early lineup was very noisy, very fuzzy, often way too loud. And we would throw our instruments around, and you know, Kim would hit me with a guitar, and that's all grunge influenced, you know, that's all doing, you know, being natural, and
Yes.
you know, we had a lot of feedback, and you know, and to be fair, the quick ascent of our band is totally, you know, post grunge, post Nirvana. You know, we got snapped up in that whole after Nirvana thing. I mean, we were talking to Warner Brothers Records 7 months after our first show. You know, like, you know, we didn't. I'm proud of this. We did not have a. We had gone in to make our first 2 7-inches by that point, but we didn't have a demo tape. We didn't have a manager. We didn't have anything. Like, we played our first show, and it just snowballed very quickly. We started getting more shows and more shows, and better shows, and people latched onto our band super quickly.
Yes, absolutely. Because your
And
first 2 singles, was that New Love and Guilty?
yeah, exactly. We recorded them at the same time, but one came out on Sympathy for the Record Industry, and one came out on A Go Go in Australia. We knew both those guys, and you know, Melanie's husband Larry, at the time, Larry Hardy, he runs a label called In the Red Records, which you might have heard of. And Larry knew all these people. You know, he knew Bruce at A Go Go. So yeah, we had these guys ready to put out these 7-inches, and then we actually got a Sub Pop. We'd actually signed to Warner Brothers, and we got the offer to do the Sub Pop single, and Warner Brothers knew that it was a good move. So we little known at the time, but we were already signed to a major label when we did our Sub Pop single.
Blimey, you did move very fast, didn't you? There was kind of everything, just because it is all about timing. I know from various people I spoke to, and some were like, oh, actually, we were just 2 years too early before a scene that really, it was kind of waiting. You know, there was a guy called Richard Strange from the Doctors of Madness who said that he was 2 years too early for punk, but everybody in the audience were like, oh, went on to form punk bands because they were quite young kids, and he was like 25 and felt like, God, we've been doing this a bit too long, haven't we? And it's like, oh, if only they had stamina. But you were obviously at the right place at the right time. And also you had a bit of a crossover though, didn't you, with the Muffs? Because that then in the UK, we had Britpop that came along, which people loved, you know, a certain aesthetic as well as a certain sound, wasn't it? Guitars, a lot of those C86 bands, you know, the audience, young kids, went on to form, you know, those Britpop bands and sort of clear up, well, sort of financially did quite well, probably. Depends what they've recorded. But, yes. But you managed to cross over from because a lot of those grunge bands didn't age well, did they? And when you look at the clips of them now, it's really hideous because they've got the hair, they've got the beat, they've got the singing about their stepfather living in small town America. It's just
well, I mean, with any scene, you're gonna have the top of the heap, and then you're gonna have the ones that are not so good. So yeah, Sub Pop's got more than its fair share of records that aren't so great. I mean, you know, bands like Cat Butt, and you know, I don't want to slag bands really.
No.
Yeah, Love Battery, you know, Green Apple, Quick Step, all these bands, you know, kind of went for it, you know, with mixed results. But
very mixed results actually. And even some of the big plays, they look a bit of a caricature with the sort of the Jack Daniels and the
by the time some of those bands signed, like bands like The Fluid and Tad, I mean, their best work was behind them on Sub Pop and other labels, you know what I mean?
Yes. So did you have your first album? Did that feel like a real honeymoon period? Because it was a big lineup of people, weren't there? There's a big lineup.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you can tell, David, I'm a fan. I'm a music fan first and foremost. So me falling into this band and becoming a musician I was always just every step of the way. I was just, wow, we have a 7-inch. Wow, we signed to Warner Brothers. Wow, we're playing, you know, this big show with, you know, Bad Religion. We're, you know, we're in the studio Sound City where Tom Petty and where Heaven Tonight was made by Cheap Trick, you know. So I was, you know, we're recording next to Masters of Reality. I'm talking to Ginger Baker, who was pleasant by day 3, by the way. He was
nice.
We got on a good basis with him. So, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, every step of the way, I was just blown away. So yeah, be on the major label and fall into the right hands. And there's a lot of good stories about that too. Like when we signed to Warner Brothers, we had two A&R guys, which is unusual. So David Katz-Nelson is the one who found us and signed us. And Dave was a young guy. He'd just become a full-fledged A&R guy. He had helped sign the Flaming Lips, but his boss Roberta got the credit. But his first full-fledged signing was Mudhoney. And after Nirvana, everyone wanted Mudhoney, right?
Yes.
And so he signed us, and he brought on Rob Cavallo. And Rob, before us, Rob was a heavy metal guy. Rob had signed a band called Sister Whiskey before us. You know, he had signed the Metal Blade label, right? After us, he signed a band called Green Day, and the rest is history. But anyway,
Yes.
yeah. So we had two A&R guys, and it was a really good mix. We made our first record with those guys, and while they were figuring out what to do with us, you know, what Warner label we'd be on. I mean, Madonna had started Maverick Records, and we had her manager Freddie DeMann, who also managed Michael Jackson, came to our little rehearsal spot place, and Madonna had our demo tape making Body of Evidence up in Oregon, and like I said, we were having meetings with Ian Copeland at his house. Like all these people were trying to, you know, to work with us.
Yes, schmoozing.
Warren Entner from the Grassroots, who was a big manager at the time. We had a meeting with him. You know, so you know, we for that record and the subsequent records as well. I don't have any of those stories like, oh, the label wanted to hear more demos and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you listen to that first record, for better or worse, we threw everything we recorded on that record. It's got an Angry Samoans cover. It's got a little dumb 30-second instrumental. It's got, you know, for better or worse, it could lose a few songs, to be honest. But you know, it's got a couple of grunge songs that sound a little dated. But you know, for better or worse, they let us do what we wanted, and that's quite amazing, actually. So, you know, Warner Brothers was great. You know, we spent $125,000 making that record. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Wow, that is unbelievable as well. And was for people like Melanie, yeah, who'd come from sort of the Pandoras, was that kind of a honeymoon period for her, being able to sort of be in a band without Paula?
Yeah. I mean, you know, Kim and Melanie were playing new instruments. I mean, for Melanie, it was really a new instrument. I mean, I know she dabbled a bit on guitar, on a song or two on stage with the Pandoras, but you know, they picked up new when we formed our band. We actually asked Roy, who became our drummer. We asked, and Roy was just out of Red Cross and stuff. We asked Roy to be the drummer, and when we formed, the prospect of a band of two Pandoras picking up new instruments and one of their boyfriends playing bass was not the handsomest offer.
Yes.
The ex Pandoras thing did us no good in the beginning of our band. We actually had to overcome that. And it didn't take long where people didn't even mention that band anymore. But yeah, you know, it was kind of a honeymoon period for all of us. But yeah, definitely for those two, because our band was doing well. We were doing what we wanted to do. You know, the girls were playing guitars, and yeah.
So when you were going into doing the second album, was there a little bit of kind of the sound shifting? Because you lose quite a few members of the first lineup, don't you?
Yeah, well, we lost our original drummer after the very first tour for our first record. I mean, Criss literally quit 2 months after that album came out. You know, and you know, without going too much, because it would take all the time we have. Criss was a little older than us, and he was very volatile. As I always say, Criss was almost out of the band the whole time he was in the band. I mean, you know, he would take his shirt off and talk a lot. He wasn't exactly like the other three of us. So yeah, so he quit. And then yeah, and with Melanie, I mean, you know, things just kind of went south with basically, well, Kim and Melanie, you know, weren't getting along so well. Maybe the last year Melanie was in the band, and you know, besides maybe some personal issues that crept up, there was you know, the fact that we had a second guitar that was cranked to 11. That just, we had some really questionable sounding shows in that era. Like I said, like especially after we got signed. I mean, the amps got bigger and stuff. So you would look at the crowd and they would just be still, and I knew like they're still because they're just hearing, you know, something that's beyond My Bloody Valentine level volume, and they can't discern a song under this. And so everything just kind of fell apart with that, and basically Rob, who was, well, we were all set to make our second record, and it came down to the fact where Kim was going to play all the guitars on the record, and Melanie quit the band when she heard about it. So we became a three-piece, and we were going in to make Blonder and Blonder, so we knew we could make the record as a three-piece. But we thought we'd get a fourth member. And what happened was, while we were recording, during the period of recording, we got offered a gig opening for Green Day, who had come out and gotten big by this point, at the Hollywood Palladium. And we were like, well, we can't turn this down. Why don't we try it as a three-piece? So we did a club gig, unbilled. Not that we were any big deal, but just to, we just did a no pressure club gig. And then we did this big gig at the Hollywood Palladium. And it was kind of instantly like, wow, this kind of works as a three-piece. It actually, you miss the other guitar at times, but it actually opens up a lot. It actually sounds better. There's actually more power in it, oddly enough. So from then on, we were a three-piece. So yeah, we stayed that lineup, me, Kim, and Roy, for the rest of our, the next 26 years.
Yes,
until Kim passed away.
You looked at Jimi Hendrix and the Police and various other bands, Cream, and thought, can work. It does work. Doesn't it?
Yeah. No, looking back, I mean, Sting is like, if people ask about what I play bass like, Sting is right there in the pocket. He's not playing things that stick out necessarily. Sting, I play like Sting, David.
Well, I mean, the guy does deliver. And then, I know you probably hate this bit, but everyone must mention your big, the sort of the single, the cover that you do, which kind of hits the sort of gold dust. So, yes, sorry about that. But
no.
So how did that sort of, because obviously I'm of that generation who we loved Kim Wilde, not Kim Deal.
Yes.
Well, we did love Kim Gordon as well, but that's just in the 80s, isn't it? Yeah, God, I know, Kim. Great name. Yeah.
Our Kim as well. Yeah.
Yes, your Kim, I know. I know, it's funny. I've never met a real Kim I've never met a Kim in real life, but I've met them. I'm just babbling now, aren't I? But it just in bands from the 80s. So look, so why what happened? Was it just because of the soundtrack?
Yeah, what happened was we were on the road for Blonder and Blonder, and we got offered Amy Heckerling, the director of Clueless, who also directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Always wanted to work with her. She asked us to do, her daughter knew our band. That's how she found out about us. And she got in touch with our management. She got in touch with us and offered us 2 songs. So it was either Kids in America or All by Myself by Eric Carmen. Great song, but obviously we couldn't really see how we were going to do All by Myself. Postscript, Jewel ended up doing All by Myself before she was a star, and that song didn't even make the soundtrack.
Right.
We recorded Kids in America in New York City on tour. We did it at Electric Lady Studios, the studio Jimmy built. And we did it over 3 nights. We scheduled a day off, or got a day off, extra day off somehow. And did that song. And to be honest, it's not a bad subject with us. Though we never played the song until the 20th anniversary years later, which we can get to that. But we worked up that arrangement and recorded it, and the song became the theme of Clueless. Like, and it's the first song on the record. I've got a platinum record over here for it. And it endures. It plays at sports events, and I heard it at a restaurant the other day. you know, and it's great to have something like that I can sit in I can meet a stranger on a plane, and I can point out something that he might not have heard of us, but he's going to know a song that we did.
Yes, I know.
Too bad we didn't write it. We bought Kim Wilde a house. I'd love to meet her one day.
Yes, I guess that's
Yeah.
it. So with like those type of arrangements, you don't sort of go, oh my God, like Nick Lowe did, I don't know, What's So Funny About Peace, Love and Understanding, which kind of goes on the soundtrack to something like The Bodyguard. I think
Yes.
that one. And, you know, though
Yeah.
Elvis has recorded it and that's his version, you know, Nick Lowe just goes, right, the rest of my life is going to be quite different.
Oh,
you know.
yeah. No. Set for life after that. I mean, I think The Bodyguard's the biggest selling soundtrack of all time.
Yeah.
So.
He can now do experimental albums till he dies. So, and it doesn't matter, does it? So is it the case with something like that? You just go, wow, we're very popular, but that didn't really do much for the bank balance.
Yeah, well, that's true because, and the thing is, it was never a proper single because the soundtrack was on Capitol. We were on Reprise, Warner Brothers, and the labels couldn't get it together to kind of figure out how to promote us. Because that's just label stuff, right? Like, you know, Capitol wasn't going to, you know, promote this band that went on their label, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I mean, you know, in a way, I don't look at it as a bad thing. I mean, yeah, we got paid like a flat fee, but you know, I get performance royalties from it, so which are fine. Again, if we'd written it, I would probably not even be talking to you, David. I'd be living on a house in the hills,
on an island somewhere.
Yeah,
next
exactly.
To Richard Branson.
Even though, yeah.
you wouldn't have a picture of Joe Jackson behind you.
Right, exactly. But there was never any real backlash, other than like some people would come to gigs thinking we were going to play that song, and we never. The thing was, we would try to rehearse it, and we'd get to that chorus, and we couldn't. It's a great song. I love the song, but Muff songs are they might sound simple, but for the most part, Muff songs are there's a lot of stuff going on. And Kids in America is a little dumber is the wrong word, but it's a little just more normal than your standard Muff song. So we never played it live until 20 years later. I guess I can tell the story now because we won't get back to it. 20 years later, we got asked if we do press for the 20th anniversary of Clueless. It's coming out on vinyl. This is 6 years ago, whenever it was. And so we got asked to do a TV appearance on a VH1 morning show. So we actually had to, we couldn't turn that down. So we had to learn the song and finally play it live. And we started playing it live in that era. And actually, people would go nuts. It's like, wow, we have this big hit single that we never, you know, and people would Instagram it and stuff. But I got a funny story about that, David. So I'd never gotten this gold record for Clueless. I had managers try to do it. They never could do it, whatever. So 20 years later, I'm talking to this publicist. I'm like, I got a great idea. Kim Wilde presents us with our gold record, and it'd be great press. And she's like, well, first off, Ronnie, it's gone platinum now. And secondly, she lives in England, but I don't know, good idea. Anyway, we got offered to do this TV show. I remind her again, I go, I got a great idea. We get presented with our platinum records on this TV show. And she didn't say anything, and we're getting interviewed by Nick Lachey from 98 Degrees on the show. And I see the box, and we got presented with our platinum records on this morning VH1 show, and I held it above my head, and we all got records, and that show got canceled about a month later. So thank God I said something, or I not have this platinum record. So
yes, well, it's nice. It's nice to have it in the bag, actually. So
yeah.
Yes, that's quite a nice little bit of closure. And you never met Kim Wilde, have you?
Never met her yet, but she seems lovely, and I would love to, if you can make that happen, David, one of these days.
That would be magic. It would be a fairy tale, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So look, you then get into the third album, which is often really tricky, because I remember interviewing Paul from the Primitives and also Dave from the Mighty Lemon Drops, and they got to that point where either their third, fourth, or possibly fifth album came out, and it was a bit like they were really struggling with keeping it together. But what was the atmosphere like in the band when you were recording the next album?
Oh, it was it was great because just going back to Blonder a bit, that like I said, Green Day had gotten big, and Green Day signed with our A&R guy, Rob, because they liked our first record. So when Green Day signed, they took our A&R guy, our producer, our booking agent, our managers, all our business people, and God love them, they got huge. So Blonder and Blonder came out in the wake of that, and so that was our big swing, right? We worked with Green Day's radio people. We used Green Day's video director, spent $60,000 on the video for Sad Tomorrow, and we didn't get on the radio, but that record is our best selling record. In our case, our second record, was stronger than the first record. And so by the time I got to the third record, we'd gone past the Blonder, and we didn't sell hundreds of thousands of units. But Kim wrote an amazing batch of songs. Happy Birthday to Me is the favorite record of all three of us that we ever made. And basically what happened was Rob was so busy that Kim kind of produced it. It says produced by the Muffs, but it's produced by Kim. They left us on our own. So we're in this big studio next to Eric Clapton, Ocean Way, making our third record. And again, nobody's breathing down our necks. It was a great batch of songs, in my opinion, and it came out just how we wanted to sound. I mean, in retrospect, we might not have worked with trendy producers or radio mixers or whatever, but the records sound fairly timeless. It's all about the song. So there's no trendy production on Happy Birthday to Me. In fact, it's a little more stripped down, but I think it's our strongest set of songs.
Yes.
So
and how was it dynamically? Because I know I did an interview with actually two members of the Galaxy 500, and there was obviously Dean and the other two. And Dean's obviously, the other two are a couple, but Dean is the writer of the band. So when it came to decision making and voting, obviously it was interesting. You could see the band weren't going to last long. So how did it cope with the Muffs having, a relationship within a three-piece band?
Well, I always knew this was special while we were around, especially as it got on. But me and Kim and Roy got along great. It was not. I read Dean's book. He doesn't sound like the easiest guy to get along with. I might take Damon and Naomi's side on that one. But we, of course, we had our flare-ups or whatever. But amongst the three of us, we would squash them immediately. So there was none of that lingering. I hate this person. Blah blah blah. Like me and Kim being a former couple, we broke up before the recording of our first record. So
right.
Yeah. And that said, we were doing so well, and we'd signed. Me and Kim we talked. We're like, look, we got to make this work out. We got to save our friendship. And that said, there were some uncomfortable moments in the van for the other members, because we knew how to piss each other off and stuff. But yeah, that said, by the time of the third record, yeah, we were well oiled at that point. The thing was, yeah, that we knew pretty immediately after it came out, though, that we were going to get dropped. In fact, we got dropped probably 3 months after the record came out. That said, we did get tour support. We did tour that record. We played bigger gigs. We headlined the Fillmore on that tour. So we did do okay. We didn't make it to Europe again. We did play in England, David. In 93 and 95. And I got to say, we always played London, and it was amazing. All our shows in London, we played the Camden Falcon. We played the Camden Underworld quite a few times.
Right.
Always great gigs, right? Like beer flying. The English crowds were just so lively and great. And the singer of Chaos UK jumping on stage and singing in my mic. And and so in 95, when we went back, we're really excited. We're like, we're going to play Leeds and Manchester, right? We're like, oh, well, these will be great. We know these towns. They're big towns. Yeah, live at Leeds. Very exciting. We're booked in a place called the Duchess of York. Sounds classy on a Saturday night. It's going to be great. Well, we play Leeds to like 20 people. And then the pubs let out, and we almost got our asses kicked by these people that got out of the pubs that were drunk. So anyway.
Yes, the Duchess.
We never made it back to England. Yeah, we sadly never made it back to England after that. But,
oh, that's a bit of a shame, isn't it? So then, as we struggled on to the millennium and slightly worried about the millennium bug, you were dropped. So then was the band having an existential sort of moment, as well as, I mean, 10 years now. This is a long period of time.
Yeah. No, we plugged along as normal for the next record, which is called Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow. Came out in 1999. We got signed by Fat Mike from NoFX to Fat Records, and what happened? We turned in the record, and he's like, "I thought you'd make a fast record." He described it as fast. We never heard anything like this in our life. He's like, I'm like, "Have you heard our other records?" He's like, "Yeah, I know." He was very cool, but he's like, so we came out on this subsidiary called Honest Dons, which had kind of poppier stuff. And so, yeah, we did another tour. It was kind of like business as usual. 2 years later, new record, tour the States again. And then the next record came out in 5 years later. And that one we kind of paid for ourselves. Our friends Anna Warrenker from That Dog and Charlotte Caffey from the Go-Go's put it out on their label. And again, we did another nationwide tour. It was 5 years later. We took our time a little bit making that one. During all these breaks too, we're still working. We're still going to Japan. We're still playing West Coast dates. We're still playing Los Angeles. Yeah, but Really, Really Happy comes out. We did the nationwide tour, and that's when we kind of took almost a 4-year break, and it was not planned. That's when we kind of took our breath, as you're kind of alluding to, because
Yes.
we've been doing it for over 10 years at that point. So yeah, there was no great meeting like we're gonna take a break. We were all friends still. We still talked during that period. But yeah, we just kind of took this break, and what got us kind of back again was we got an offer to go to Spain. So 2004, so this would have been like 2008, maybe late 2008, early 2009. We got an offer to go to Spain. We've not been to Spain since 1995. We went to Spain, and it went just splendidly. In fact, ever since we came back at that point and continued till the end of Kim's active career, our shows were big love fests. Like the crowds were so happy to see us, and in foreign countries, people were crying in our presence. I know it's hard to believe.
Yeah, amazing.
But a lot of love in the crowd, and we really became a better band than we ever were at the end of our career. So, yeah, that led to making a record, and we made Whoop-De-Doo. We worked on that for a long time, and basically it was finished even a year before Kim joins the Pixies. So, yeah, that was funny. Kim and Roy, they know I got a big mouth. I like to gossip. So Kim was in the Pixies for like 8 months before they announced it officially. And so, and Roy knew a couple months prior that we have this Muffs meeting because we have Whoop-De-Doo. We're trying to figure out what to do with it, how we're going to put it out. And we have this meeting, and Kim's like, "Okay, I'm in the Pixies. So what we're going to do," and I'm like, wait, what? You're in the Pixies? Yeah, I'm in the Pixies. So what's going to happen is I'm going to do this tour and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. So we had that little side jag. And yeah, when Kim joined the Pixies, basically she did 3 big tours with them. And before they let her go. And to be honest, Kim, they had a whole nother year of touring they had planned too. So Kim was looking at these dates and thinking like, I don't know how I'm going to do this because, again, band dynamics. The Pixies weren't the friendliest band to be in. Kim had all sorts of stories. I remember she posted a video of them in the van, and it's complete silence, and Kim's got the camera on her face. I remember commenting like, "Wow, it's not like that in our vehicle. Like we're just constant chatter." And again, it's a family thing. Like the 3 of us in the Muffs were, it was a true family. And in the Pixies, they might be playing bigger gigs, they might be staying in 5-star hotels and flying first class, but it was not as fun for her.
Was she kind of slightly rolling her eyes in a, oh my God, this is like
just things? I mean, yeah, things. I mean, everything was. There's a lot of hype about that. She stage dove or whatever. That happened at like the 3rd gig she did with them. And yeah, there's an English manager who would tell her, Pixies don't do that, that kind of thing. And, she had to play these bass pedals on one of their new songs, which you could see her on these TV appearances, like Jules Holland, scowling as she's hitting these bass pedals. You know, again, huge. We're all huge Pixies fans, and Kim was too. But yeah, it was not the funnest thing for her, and I'm
No.
not just saying that retroactively, because Kim was, if not genuine. Kim, no, nobody said and did what she wanted more than Kim, of anyone I've ever known in my life. So Kim did not do things she didn't want to do. So yeah, so
And
whoop-de-doo, yeah. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, were you able to sort of have music as your full-time occupation? Did you have to sort of supplement that, or were you able to just about keep going just on playing live and
Yeah,
sort
no. I started work. I went 10 years, the major label years, and a little beyond, without having a day job. And then I started working in a record store, and which is what I used to do when I was a kid, and it's what I still do. So yeah, the money, most of the money I made from the band, was live gigs. We also were lucky enough to we had a song in a Fruitopia. It's not around anymore. Fruitopia was like a Snapple type drink made by Coca-Cola. We had a song in a commercial in the late 90s. The 90s also, we had a lot of songs, besides Clueless, we had a lot of our own songs in films and TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
my God, I love that series so much.
Yeah. No, our song's playing in the lair of the evil vampires when Buffy goes to college. And that stuff was very lucrative in those days. It's not as much anymore. But so yeah, we were lucky enough. Back in those days, we ended up on a lot of those soundtracks because they would call Warner Brothers and say, "What bands do you have?" And they'd send them like Mudhoney, Babes in Toyland, and us, and we would get the gig because we'd be the band that was more the director could understand. So we ended up in a Ivan Reitman directed movie called Father's Day with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal in the 90s.
Right.
And,
yes.
We did a Drew Carey HBO special. I mean, we worked all these kind of media things. We were in a Aaron Spelling TV show. So we made a lot of money like that. When the video games came out, Rock Band, they had Kids in America on one. The next one, they wanted our song Outer Space from Happy Birthday to Me. And Rock Band was a video game where you play guitar or drums. You probably are semi-aware of it.
Yeah.
Sold huge numbers, right? And what happened was they needed the multi-tracks, and we went to find the master tapes of Happy Birthday to Me, and found out that we had checked them out for some soundtrack project, brought them to a studio owned by Chick Corea, and the tapes were never returned. So the master tapes are missing. I love this too. They called Chick Corea 20 years later to say, "Do you have these Muffs master tapes?" I'm sure he was like, "What? I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about." Yeah, but it turned into a blessing because we re-recorded the song, David. So we own the version. So we made like 40 grand in advance from Rock Band. So we have had some paydays along the way.
Nice. It's good to hear.
But yeah, I did go back to having a day job, and that said, working in a record store, I was able to have understanding bosses that would let me take time off to go tour when I needed to, or not work
a lot
5
of
days a
bands.
week.
I know a lot of bands have had to do that. Like the guy from the Hard On said, when he was in the band, when it was really sort of cooking to begin with, so to speak, he was studying, and they would just have to cram tours or recording, and then go back and quickly do a bit more studying, and then it was impressive. I think in England we're just a bit more lazy. We just think we can't juggle that much. We just like do one thing or the other. And when it doesn't quite happen, it's like that's the band over. So they don't really sort of persevere. That's a sweeping statement, anyway. But
yeah,
it's kind of true. But yeah, so whoop-de-doo, and that went down well. But that was on another small label, wasn't it?
It was. We got a lot of press for that record though, because of the timing. It was on, Burger Records, which I know has a reputation of sorts these days. But at the time, it was a new kind of hip label to be on, and so we ended up on Burger. We hadn't had a record in 10 years. Right after Kim's out of the Pixies, all these things make for good press things to talk about. So there was a bit of hype, if you will, but it was on a small label. And that said, it's 2014, so things are selling less and less, physically, just like today. But that said, we we started doing, besides doing these foreign territories, which were lucrative for us, doing Spain, doing Italy, doing Japan, doing South America, and then we would do fly-ins in the States. We'd fly to the East Coast, play our beloved home base Maxwell's in New Jersey, play New York City, play Philadelphia. You know,
Did you ever play Vegas?
we did play Vegas. We would do the punk. I'm proud of this in our band. We were able to play punk rock festivals, power pop festivals, garage festivals, open for No Doubt, open for a heavy metal band. So yeah, we would do the punk rock bowling festival in
Classic.
Vegas, which you may or may not have heard of.
I've heard, yes.
Yeah. But they bring big bands, so Stiff Little Fingers and Angelic Upstarts, as well as bands like us. And
Yes.
yeah, and we go over great. Yeah, we go over great. So
yeah.
yeah.
But then, I mean, obviously the work, then we all know that Kim starts to sort of, her health deteriorates quite badly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that all happened very quickly. In retrospect, a lot of this is very kind of poetic. But we had, in April of, I'm losing track now, 4 years ago, this past April, we finally made it to South America. We finally made it to Argentina, which had been trying to get us there forever. And in Buenos Aires, we played a place that held 1,000 people, that were all rabid Muffs fans. And it's one of those things. It's a curtain. The curtain goes up. My knees buckle at the sound of this crowd, and that's the crowd we're bowing to on the cover of our last record, No Holiday. It was that show. So we went and did this trip and had 4 amazing shows with a lot of love, big shows. And a month later, we flew up to Vancouver to do another show, and that ended up being our last show. So our final shows were these really amazing, big shows in front of big crowds, and we had worked steadily for a couple of years at this point. So we had decided to take the summer off, and Kim was going to write. Kim had already written a batch of songs, but they tend to come in bunches with her. So she was going to write another batch. We're not going to book any gigs during the summer. So we talked, but come August, Kim picks me up and we're going to do a podcast in Hollywood. And she tells me, we talked about it a little in the car, and we talk about it on the podcast, and you can hear this. It's kind of eerie in retrospect, but she's telling me how she's having trouble gripping with her left hand. And she's going to see doctors, and there's all sorts of opinions. Some think it's carpal tunnel. Some think it's a nerve in her neck that's affecting the nerves in her arm. But you hear on this podcast, she's talking about it, and you hear her go like, it's going to be okay. These doctors, I think they got it figured out. And you hear me say, I'm very concerned. And I was. And so around that time, too, a friend of ours, Derek Anderson, had made a record. And Kim and the girls from the Bangles, the Peterson sisters, had played the backing track. And Derek did this show with, he wanted to assemble the Peterson sisters and Kim to be his backing band. Well, Kim couldn't play guitar, so she just shook a tambourine and sang backups. And there's a picture that my friend Steve-O took, and he didn't know what he was taking at the time, but it's a picture of her holding her hand up to my face. And you see this look on my face that's just like dead, no expression. And she's holding, it's from the back of Kim. You see her holding the hand up to her, and she's showing me how she can't move her hand. And I'll try to keep it together talking about all this. And ALS, and for those of you that might be listening, look it up if you don't know what it is. ALS is a disease that basically shuts down your whole body. You can't move. It takes away your speech, but your brain is fully on, which is perhaps the most inhumane thing about it. So around October, she calls me and Roy, and she had gotten diagnosed with ALS. ALS ran in her family. Her father passed away from it. Her aunt. Kim was always scared of getting it because it is hereditary of sorts. It doesn't mean you're going to get it necessarily, but she calls us crying, and she's had a doctor that didn't know her family history say it's likely ALS. And God, I'll never forget so many things. I'll never forget that. And at that point, we decide. Kim says, "Well, we have to finish this record somehow. I can't play." At that point, her speech was still there. She's starting to get a little slurry. We'd actually got offered a show opening for the Dream Syndicate, 2 shows here in San Francisco, at a big place here called the El Rey Theater. And we took the shows. They were gonna be in December, and we actually agreed to do them. And Kim was just gonna sing, and we were gonna have our friend Adam play guitar. It was gonna be a little different, but she wanted to do it. And a month after we booked it, and about a month before the shows, Kim had to admit that her voice was going, and she didn't think she was going to be able to do it. And so we canceled the shows. And so come December, we decide we have to make this record, and we're going to have to build it around demos. It's going to have to be, I kind of compare it to Syd Barrett's Madcap Laughs, which they kind of recorded around these acoustic demos he did, which were and Kim's demos. If you hear these kind of deluxe versions of our Warner Brothers records, there's some of Kim's demos around there. And Kim was great at making demos. I always wanted to compile a whole record, like her scoop, if you will, because her demos were so good and so fully formed. And, we were a pop band. We didn't jam, like Soundgarden. They were concise and
yes.
As a band, we might work out some arrangement ideas, but Kim, she was a great songwriter, I will say, as an outsider. So we had to form these, and for this record, she didn't do that. She'd done these acoustic versions and wanted us to kind of learn them like that. And that's what we were kind of doing. And we were playing some of these songs live already too. We always had new songs live. But yeah, so we went in the studio to record drums to these demos, and Roy knocked them out in like 2 days. Mainly in 1 day. And so we had these songs, and so the disease took over Kim. It moved super quickly. So by March, she could not move or speak. Okay. So she had a machine that was like an iPad that could read her eyeball so she could construct sentences. And it would talk for her. I got to say, during her illness, Kim, anytime I saw her, she did nothing but smile. I would make her laugh. It was my duty to make her laugh. But anyway, that's how she communicated. But she never lost her sense of humor. I'd walk in, and the computer voice would say, "Your girlfriend's got a hairy pussy," and Kim would just smile. But that's how she communicated. So we assembled this record. Kim oversaw everything. She had the Pro Tools stuff. She was in one room looking at this big TV screen. And our friend Karen from the Pandoras engineered these overdubs. So me and Karen would be in the other room. I had my bass, and Kim was communicating through the Viber app with this machine. So she'd say, like, "Do it again. That's a little flat." All the producer type stuff. "Great job. I love you." She would communicate with us.
Yeah.
And that's how we constructed this record. And it's
amazing that it got done, first off, and that it came out as cohesive as it is, because some parts, some demos were just like a verse and a chorus, so we had to kind of complete a song, kind of repeat parts, to make a whole song. All this, it's like trickery, and so that's why Kim's vocals on that, there, it was what she recorded is what we had to work with. So
God, that's amazing.
that's why some of the vocals are recorded better than others. Some we had to kind of bring it out more. Some have the acoustic guitar on the same track, so there's all this weird production stuff. But we completed this final work, and
And Kim, as you probably know, was not public about her illness. So we had to go along like, we're taking a break. We're turning down foreign tours and stuff, and we're not touring right now. And meanwhile, my heart is breaking because I know that my friend and bandmate has this fatal disease. I mean, there's no cure, and it's there's no some people have milder systems and can go on for years, but it moves so quick with her.
Yes.
Yeah. So we made this record, turned it in, and actually the press went out. This being a journalist, the press goes out 3 months before release date. So we had to have this kind of thing like, we recorded this record a little differently. We fell in love with the demos and wanted to make it different than our other records, and hearing it's definitely different than our other records. So we had to kind of do that, and just fate stepped in, and Kim passed away 2 weeks before it came out, and
Wow.
it was already came out, but she did get to see it. We did have physical copies, so she did get to see it and know it was coming out, and was very happy with it. We would message each other and tell each other, we made a great record. I love this record, and so.
God, that's so emotional, isn't it?
Yeah. No,
it does kind of remind me a bit of, I suppose, what Tony Visconti and David Bowie were going through in that kind of moment where, they realized it wasn't good, and they needed to get Black Star done, and, it just comes out the day before. Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's why I always, when I see these bands that are like battling or whatever, like Cheap Trick with Bunny Carlos, it's like, life is short. Like none of this, whatever you're arguing about, it's usually money or stuff, right? Business stuff. But like, bury the hatchet and try to work it out.
Yes.
Because, not everybody makes it,
No, and I'm sure those guys, when they're possibly on their deathbed, going, I wish I hadn't bothered doing all that stuff. I wish I'd moved on, or just kind of had the conversation and moved on, or just moved on. Because you're going to regret it, really, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I never would have thought. I mean, our band would be around for. I mean, I count our band being around until the day Kim died. So we're around 28 years, and that's astounding. I mean, to me, a band. It's probably because we never had a big hit single, right? We just had this kind of mid-level career. We just, could fill clubs and of people who love us, and the people who like us tended to like us a lot. And how lucky is that? Most bands would kill for that kind of career. So
well, absolutely.
I'm very proud of us.
It's a very amazing story, and also with the Pandoras as well, which was a nice little sort of add-on as well. So then when that album came out, obviously that was kind of 2019. Then last year, geezy crazy. So how have you been since, kind of that kind of experience? Because that was a huge emotional hurricane.
Yeah, I also want to say the response, the press and everything after Kim passed away was unbelievable. Like, she got tributes from like the Who at the Hollywood Bowl. They put pictures of us on the screens, and said, "Rest in peace, Kim." Elvis Costello had a posting about praising Kim's songwriting. I mean, Kim would have been blown away. Like, and she got on like big news. Like, I don't know. I said this at her funeral too. I don't know where all these motherfuckers were when they were taking us for granted, but it was nice to see. But yeah, since then, I mean, the Muffs, that was my band. I mean, I'm not, again, like I said early on, I'm not, gonna place an ad and look for people to play with. If I get an offer that I can't refuse, I'll do it. Last year, and I didn't know him, Ginger Wildheart from the Wildhearts, who you probably know. Because they're big in it. Yeah, I saw he wore a Muffs shirt, so I just sent him a message saying, honor to have you wear our shirt. I'm a fan. He wrote me back. He's like, what are you doing these days? I'm like, I'm retired, from music. And he's like, retired. How'd you like to play on a song? And if you know anything about Ginger Wildheart, the guy is nothing if not prolific. So he had me play on a song. I don't know what it's for. I don't know if it's for a solo record or but I did that last year. So look for that. But yeah, I'm that was my band. I'm that's just the way it is. I'm happy to be retired. In one respect, I'm happy to be out of the game at this point, right? Like I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not wondering what gigs I'm going to play, or if I should play this year or next year, how I'm going to roll this out. If people are going to come to clubs, I'm not really.
But I guess you do hold the kind of the torch, don't you, for the band? You hold the kind of essence or the kind of I suppose you have the kind of the baton, don't you?
No. Me and Roy is not on social media, so I guess I'm kind of the more visible member that does. But yeah, and look, I'm proud to do it. I'm proud to do interviews and talk to people. It's still, things still happen. I mean, like this phenomenon with the young girls, the Lindas. I don't know if you know about this. They went viral. I mean, this band of young girls that grew up on the Muffs. There's a picture of them when they were really little, like 5, dancing in the background of a Muffs show. But they covered one of our songs and a Bikini Kill song for this movie on Netflix called Moxie. And they did a live show from a LA library, and they have a song called Racist Boy, Dumb Racist Boy. It went viral. They got like literally 250,000 followers on Instagram, like within like a weekend. And like they signed to Epitaph and they're young Asian American girls that are like 10 that are big Muffs fans. So the Muffs got mentioned in all these articles, like Variety. They got press everywhere.
Fantastic.
So things still pop up, and things still could pop. You never know. Somebody might call me tomorrow and want to use a song in a commercial, or
well,
you never know. So.
Yes. Well, as things start to alter again. So look, just kind of almost lastly, I mean, if you could have said something to your 16, 18-year-old self starting out, is there any kind of top little kind of bullet points that you would say, God, yes, I would definitely have told them that, do this or don't do that, or that's good and that wasn't such a great idea?
I would have said, you have quite a ride ahead of you, and you're not going to believe what's going to happen, because it's true. I never thought I'd be in a band for almost 30 years that would be working. I never thought any of this would happen. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I'd probably be in music. I always assumed I'd be a guy working at a label, a behind the scenes guy. So
yes.
No, I would tell my 16-year-old self that you were gonna have a life continuing to do what you love and appreciate what you love, and you're gonna meet your idols, and you're gonna have people from Cheap Trick know who you are, and
Yes, well, absolutely, and
give myself a big smile and a hug, and yeah.
Well, it has turned out. I mean, it's really sad about Kim and the illness. Obviously, that's horrendous. But I mean, some of knowing that you've been sort of loved by people like Elvis Costello, who we love, and it's just amazing, really. So
who knew? I know. Kim would have just, if she didn't pass away when she did, she would have passed away at that, because Elvis Costello is everything to all of us, for so many years. Yeah. So he even named a couple of our songs. So I know he really was listening.
Yes, well, absolutely. Well, yeah. Elvis is quite the fan. This is great. Well, look, thank you ever so much for this. This has been amazing, and I'm just really grateful that you gave me the time. So, if you want, I can always give you kind of a link to the interview, and then you can always post it on your social media site if you so wish.
No, absolutely, David. I'm a big fan. I'm proud to be amongst the people you've interviewed. You interviewed some of my idols. I'm astounded at some of the guests you get. I'm sure you are too. So.
Yes,
yeah.
I know. God, I know. This is amazing. But look, that's great. Well, I'll let you get on. But thank you again for this. And look, all the best. And, amazing story. And it started with Elvis.
It started with Elvis. Yeah, Elvis. Both Elvises. So prominent. Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care. Thanks a lot. Take care. See you.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you go. That is how you end a conversation. I love leaving that bit in at the end, it just amuses me to hear it. somebody, myself, squirming. Anyway, look, a massive thank you to Ronnie Barnett from the Muffs. And yes, just marvellous. That's all I've got to say. Anyway, thank you also for listening. If you still are, well done. You get a house point. But this has been David Eastaugh, the C86 Show. If you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just do C86 Show and keep it positive. Otherwise, don't bother. And also, yeah, all these interviews have been archived. You can find those on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. It's true. Anyway, that's it. Have a good week. Stay safe.